Hey, everybody. We have Susan Masino, rock journalist royalty, author, speaker, and overall if any of us are into rock and roll, this is who we'd want to be.
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name's Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is quite then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right, and we're going to bring Mark back on here. Oh, man, he's back. So we're two in an attempted beard.
Oh.
But, yeah. So the third one, Chris, he is out sick today. He has got some allergies kicking his butt, so he's taking the night off. So this time, I would really like to welcome Susan Masino to the show, rock journalist, overall author, speaker. You're into the paranormal. There's just we'll unpack this thing, but welcome to the show. I can't wait to talk to you about all this.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Hey, we'll see if we can keep that enthusiasm up throughout the show. We'll try our best. No, man, where to start? Here is a small town, basically reporter, and you end up forming some of the most relationships with some of the most iconic rock groups out there, AC/DC, Van Halen. And to start off, how did this start to where this is something that you wanted to actually get into, to actually recover rock and roll groups, go to these concerts, do these things? Oh, we lost our audio. Nope, we haven't. Let's try again. Let's see. That's weird. We had audio in the beginning. Now we didn't. Now let's see. So while we're waiting, yeah, I don't know if we still can't hear
Susan. What happened?
Yeah, she can hear us, but we can't hear her. So, Susan, just exit out and come back in and see if that fixes it. Sometimes that'll happen, and we'll cover for you while you're doing that. So
I already ate my burrito, but I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. You can't watch me eat my burrito now.
I know. Yep, that's part of it. So we're gonna all sit here slowly while Austin slowly eats a burrito and just makes us all feel awkward. Yeah. So you go to SusanMasino.com. You can get more information on her and all of her history. She's a rock and roll historian. She has got books out: The Story of AC/DC, Let There Be Rock, AC/DC Facts, which just came out, and we might have her back. Let's see.
Okay.
There's the audio. Okay.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we'll wind back. Okay. How did you get started in this?
Okay. Well, I grew up in the business. My parents owned a ballroom on the Wisconsin River when I was born, and they had all kinds of, Louis Armstrong, the Dorsey brothers, Gene Krupa. Of course, I don't remember any of this because I was a baby, but they continued to have restaurants and bars, and they had a hotel up in northern Wisconsin, so they had live music all the time. So I grew up watching bands load in and load out and watching them perform. And then we'd get, become friends with the people in the bands and things like that. So when I got older, I wanted to be in the music business, but I really didn't know how, because I wasn't a musician. And I started going out to see local bands in Madison, Wisconsin with a friend. And I went to a party one night and I realized that a lot of the people there were not musicians. They were lighting techs and roadies and publicists and agents. And it hit me that it's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to be a musician to be part of this. And I met a couple guys that were publishing a paper called the Mad City Music Sheet. And it was, a local paper. And I just tried to get in there, get my foot in the door. And one of the first things, because I was a chick, they weren't that interested in me, to tell you the truth. It was a boys only thing, if you know what I mean. And so one day, the day that Elvis died on August 16th, 1977, I was literally driving by the paper's office. They had an office on Atwood Avenue in Madison. And my great intuition said to me, why don't you pull over and try to get something, get an assignment somehow? And I pulled in, walked in. One of the guys got off the phone, Gary, and I said, is there anything, do you got anything coming up, anything I can review? And he's like, well, not really, but, I just talked to a promoter out of Milwaukee, Stardate. They are bringing a band in tonight to the Stone Hearth, which is a local band or a local club downtown. And he said they need a gopher, they need somebody to just help out and, and get stuff for the band if they need it, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do whatever. So I started running out the door and I stopped, I turned around and I said, wait a minute, what band is it? And he says, I don't know, some band out of Australia called AC/DC. And I was
awesome.
I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have a clue of what I was walking into, but that's how it all started.
Wow. God,
So what happened?
Yeah. So
when you got backstage and at the venue.
Oh, well, okay. I went down to the club at 4:00 and I was immediately sent out to the liquor store to buy Blue Nun wine for the singer. The band wasn't there. They were out eating dinner. There were a 3-man road crew that was setting up. And I had never heard their music. They were not getting airplay, so I had no idea what we were dealing with. But they did have a 1-page flyer, and they weren't that good looking in the pictures. Let's put it that way. They're a little scary looking.
Yeah.
And and the promo said that they had started because they had done a tour of the United Kingdom before they came to the States, and their publicity thing said they had started brawls from one end of Europe to the other. And I thought, oh, great, good idea. So so I fixed up, the deli trays, and we filled up stuff with ice and, put sodas and beer and all that in there. And I decided I was going to keep my distance from the band, if you will. Mm-hmm. And It was a small club. The dressing room was in a loft above the bar. So it was very low key, not a very fancy place. And around, I don't know, maybe like 6:00, the band showed up. And I started to back out of the dressing room as they came in. And I was saying, the drinks are over there. There's snacks there. If you need mixed drinks, come on downstairs and find me. And I'll be downstairs. And I'm backing out of the door, and this dark-haired, shaggy-haired guy with tats up and down his arms, he walked right up to me, put his face right in my face, and yelled, "Sit!" So I grabbed a chair, I pulled it over and sat down, and he went across the room. He poured 2 glasses of Blue Nun wine, walked over to me, handed me a glass, and said, "Hi, I'm Bon Scott. You must be Sue." And I was like, how do you know who I am? And Malcolm, who I didn't know was Malcolm at the time, he was sitting on the couch, and he laughed and he said, "Oh, the promoter told us all about you. He said you're going to do anything we want." And that's when, then it went, we hit it off really well, but it was hard to understand their accents. They were very mixed accents from Australia. Cliff was from England. The road crew, Barry, was from England. But it took me a while to kind of figure out, what they were saying. And Angus didn't say a word. He came in, he sat down, he was tuning his guitars the whole time. And I hung out with them while the first band played. And then when they got ready to play, I had no idea what I was in for. So I went downstairs and I stood next to the soundboard, and I was maybe like 30 feet in front of the band. And the lights went down and the band started playing the opening riffs to Live Wire. And then the spotlight came on, and Bond's standing there with tight jeans, no shirt on. And the rhythm section alone was, Malcolm, Phil, and Cliff. And once Angus kicked in, I backed all the way up until I hit the wall, and the hair on my arm stood straight up. And I knew at that moment that these guys were going to be huge. And that's, my life hasn't been the same since.
No, it's one of those, you just like to hear those stories. Here's everybody's talked. The thing, this Bon Scott was the partier. He was the hardcore partier, and everybody, especially when I was growing up, I always rock and roll. Everybody's just think. And then you realize Angus and Malcolm, I'm not sure about, Cliff, but they were the ones where, a cup of tea, and it was the type that, just the more relaxed, just type thing. And you're expecting all these guys to be like partiers trashing hotel ranges. And they really weren't the crazy ones. It's just, was a surprise to me.
Oh yeah. Well, they were a little crazy, but Bon was definitely the party guy. And when he was in the room, he would do anything to make you laugh. He was always doing something crazy. And it was so funny because at the end of the night, he invited me to come back to the motel with the guys. And of course I said, thank you, but no. And I found out later that two of my male friends that were at the club that night, they actually went out to the motel, and Bon wouldn't let them in because they were guys.
Oh,
that's funny.
Yeah. I had kind of a giggle over that because I'm like, hey, what did you expect? They don't want to hang out with guys. They're looking for some chicks, okay? So that was kind of funny.
That was it. This was AC/DC's first American tour.
Yes, actually, it was their 15th date, but the 14th time they played because they had to cancel the date in Texas. But they had just come to the States. Let There Be Rock was out. It was the Let There Be Rock tour, but they had no airplay in the States, so I had never heard them. I didn't know what they sounded like at all until I saw them live.
Yeah. So what, what brought them over to the States? Was that the record label? Was that, that's what they're going? So that was just, they were just kind of following along, like so this wasn't like them venturing out trying, but this is the record label that was doing this.
Right. Actually, they had gotten a tour of the United Kingdom, and a man that worked for Atlantic Records, God bless him, Perry Cooper, he passed away during my interviewing him for the book when it first came out in 2006. And he was very much behind because Atlantic wasn't sure about the band. They weren't sure about Angus. They thought he copied Chuck Berry too much, and Bon had a weird voice, and they weren't sure they liked his voice. And Perry Cooper was one of the people that were so adamant about the fact that we've got to get them out and let people see them. We have to get them on tour. And boy, did they tour. In the next couple of years, in the States alone, they put on over 40,000 miles. So
God, that is crazy.
Yeah,
it was travel time. Yeah,
very tough, very hard work.
I just put a picture, pretty much about the time, like I said, it would have been time period that you, like I said, I just had the Bon Scott, and then there was Yep. It's just so. What was your first impression of Malcolm and Angus? I mean, really, when you after hanging out with them. I mean, what did you?
Oh, I loved. I mean, I can't even tell you how much I love those guys. And Angus was very soft spoken at the time. He didn't talk a lot, but Malcolm, which most people wouldn't think, but Malcolm was a little chatterbox. Malcolm loved to talk, and I always knew who the boss was, which was Malcolm.
Malcolm. Hmm.
And a lot of people didn't know that. And I had such tremendous respect for him because everything that they did or they played or recorded or wrote or anything came out of Malcolm's head. All the riffs, all the stuff, all the plans. And he is one of his favorite things he used to say to me back when, they were broke. He said all he wanted to do was be filthy rich. That was that was his goal.
They got it.
I think they did. And but when I first wrote the book that came out in 2006, and now it's been updated, the Let There Be Rock book, I broke their history down a week at a time, and it took me 7 years to find a break longer than 2 weeks. That's how hard they worked.
Wow, I'm trying to bring up that picture so everybody could see it here too, because that's I'm not sure if Mark had the book handy there or not.
Yes, that's just updated. Just came out in September of 2020.
There's that one. Then obviously the one that's the
one
your
I
newest
have.
one, the ACDC Facts. That's one too. It's just that your latest one that came out, and yeah, there's some stories. I mean, obviously with you following him, I mean, that was quite the change with Bon Scott's death.
Yeah, it was horrible. I mean, they were doing so well, and I have to throw this in. The night that I first met the band, I waited till everybody left, and there was like 75 people there. I still have the poster. It was $3 to get in. And there was like 75 people there, and everybody that saw them wanted to meet them after the show, of course. So I waited till everybody, got their autographs, and met the band. And then I walked up to Bon, and I looked at him and I said, God, Bon, I said, you guys blew my socks off. And he looked at me and he goes, I did what? And and I said, oh, I'm sorry, that's American slang. You guys are amazing. So I started telling the band that, and I don't know why I said this, but I did. And some people accuse me of like, oh, was she psychic? Well, obviously I was, because I said to them, you guys are going to be huge. It's going to be 2 to 3 years from now, but you guys someday are going to be as big as the Rolling Stones. And now, looking back on their history, they're the only band at the SARS benefit in Toronto, the only band to ever co-headline with the Rolling Stones. And that became a running joke for 40 years. So that was,
I just, like, for me, growing up, like said, I apologize. I don't know if you covered that in your book, but like some of the live shows like Donington. In England, oh my God, that was one of the first like live concerts I watched through YouTube stuff to watch of the concert, and just the sea of people that are just out there. So it's like thunderstruck when you just watch the whole crowd just jumping to the song. It's one of those you feel those your hair stands up. You feel that just what it must have been like for those guys. And I mean, just to go from, like we were saying with Bon Scott's death, I mean, here's this massive low, and then to have Brian Johnson come on, and just it's like, and then just all of a sudden here is this, and it's like okay, we're back on it.
Yeah, and it's no less a miracle that happened the way it did, because when I watched them, I followed them through 77, the end of 77, 78, and all of 79. Got to hang out with Bon many times, absolutely adored him. And the last time I saw them was in October of 79 at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. And I knew they were beyond exhausted, like so spent, drained. I mean, I felt kind of bad because they were, they had worked so hard. I knew they were going home. They're going to have, I think they had some dates, but then they, had the holidays, and then they're going to London to start the new album in January. So everybody was really high on the success of Highway to Hell, with Mutt Lange producing and, them finally getting that airplay with Highway to Hell and Touch Too Much. It was just like a rocket, and it was taking off. And then they go to London and Bon dies. And that was, I mean, I don't even have the words for it, of how devastating and shocking and heartbreaking. I mean, it was like, no. Bon, no. Bon doesn't leave. That can't happen. And when it did, the band, I don't even think they were going to continue with the band, to tell you the truth, at first. And at Malcolm's when they were at Bon's funeral, Malcolm talked to Bon's father, and Bon's father insisted that they continue. He said, you're right there. You're right there. You guys are right there. And Bon would never want you to stop. He would be very upset if you did. And then they hung out. They took a little time off. They didn't get a lot of time off, believe me. They've got the record company, they got the managers, they got a lot of suits involved. Okay. Yep. So when they were auditioning people, what I heard anyway was a fan actually sent a cassette tape of Geordie, Brian Johnson's band, to the management and said, you've got to audition this guy. And what's really crazy, if you read my book, is that when now Bon was in 3 major bands, the Valentines in the 60s, like a pop group band. And then he was in Fraternity, which was kind of like a Grateful Dead type band. And that band toured England. And when Fraternity toured England, Bon saw Brian in Geordie. He actually saw them. And I heard that they actually spoke and hung out a little bit. I've heard different stories. But one time when Bon came back, he said, hey, if you ever need to replace me, this is the guy you got to call. But they didn't remember that. So the fact that Brian, I believe that Brian Johnson was born to replace Bon Scott. There's nobody else on the planet that would have fit better than Brian in a million ways. So
yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, just what are the odds that you, not only would you run into the, your soon to be replacement, and the fact that you would tell somebody that's the guy that's going to replace me.
Exactly.
That's one of those that, it's too much of to be coincidence. I mean, this is one of those, it's like this meant to be type thing. That's crazy. And
it's funny too that, they did several auditions, even, they considered like Paul Rogers from Bad Company. There's a lot of names on the list. And Malcolm said that after they hired Brian, he said Brian was the first person that made us laugh after Bon died. And Brian could be a stand-up comedian. He is hilarious. Like everything he does and says is hilarious. I had a drink with him right after the SARS benefit in Florida, which was crazy how that happened. But he does a mean impression of Keith Richards, I'm telling you. And he was telling us how they were sitting in the green room, and Mick Jagger walks in, and Keith leans over to Brian like Brian doesn't know better, and he goes, "That's our singer." It's like, yeah, that's Mick Jagger right there. Yeah. But yeah, Keith was like, that's our singer.
Oh my God. Those are those groups. I mean, I said what I would kind of tease in the beginning. This is what I said. You've lived the lifestyle that anybody that's really into rock and roll wishes that they could do. You've had all these experiences, all these personal relationships. I mean, we haven't even gotten into your time with Van Halen yet. I mean, that's you want to get some stories, we're going to get to the, we'll get to that.
But Bond's calling Susan from the road too.
Well, actually, Barry called. Barry would call, but Barry would call or write every week for the next 3 years. But one time they were in Scotland, and Barry stopped at a payphone to call me, and Bond went with him. And Bond came into the phone booth with Barry, and he was making smoochy sounds and, oh, Susie, I love you. And we were laughing so hard that Barry finally said, I'll call you tomorrow. Had to hang up because Bond wouldn't leave him alone. So Bond liked to tease me. We teased. I mean, that was the fun part about AC/DC is that they're so like 40 years later, they're super whatever, they're icons. And I could still walk in the room and go, what? Aren't those the same jeans you were wearing when I met you?
Yeah.
I mean, really, buy some clothes for God's sake. So, I
mean, I might be wrong, but it seems like, especially in Bon Scott's thing, because he's such a partier too, that to have somebody not only when he's like, hey, come back to the motel with me. No, he offered several times actually, at different occasions. Yeah, and it was just that probably was one of those people where it's like she's the first one that's ever just said no and walked away. It's like, what, it's like what's wrong? Yeah, what's wrong? Or what's wrong with me?
Do with that?
Yeah, and so you probably got to that side of him where he was just like you became more that the friendship was so formed at that point where it's like because you probably were the first one to just basically refuse him.
No, and they came back. The really cool thing is that when they came back the second time in the States was December of '77. So it was only about 3 months after I had seen them, less than 3 months. And I went to Milwaukee to see them. And that night I actually sat down with all 5 band members and recorded a half-hour interview, which I call basically mayhem, because they wouldn't answer any questions. Like the first thing, okay, I will watch my language here, but
you don't have to.
I'm this little 21-year-old, big-eyed girl that loves rock and roll. At that point, I'd seen everybody. I'd seen The Who, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Cream. I mean, I had seen everybody. I had never seen anything like AC/DC. And so I was thrilled to just be close enough to know them. And so the first thing I said I had the trusty tape recorder between my legs and Bond's legs. We were sitting on a couch. And the first thing I said to him was like, I'm going to help you guys. I am going to, do my best to promote you. And I'm going to write about you. And the first thing Bond said to me is he's like, if you're anything nasty, we're going to F you silly. And I went,
nice. I
was like, okay. Oh, all right then. So then I said to him, well, you just got back from the United Kingdom. And, the British and the American audiences, what's the difference between the two? And then Bond looked at me and he says, one's British and one's American.
I love it. I love the dry humor.
So, during the interview, Cliff is yelling his hotel room number at me in the background, which God knows why I didn't do something with that. But anyway, Angus asked me to marry him twice. And when I said no the second time, he said, fine, you're too short for me anyway. And the cutest thing about this whole thing was we're sitting there and they think that they're in Chicago. And I said, no, you guys are a little north, about 2 hours north. You're in Milwaukee. And all of a sudden, Malcolm got this look of awe on his face. And he goes, this is where Fonzie lives. We're where Fonzie lives. And then he looks off into the distance and he goes, oh, wouldn't that be cool if we ran into Fonzie in the lobby? And I couldn't correct him. I was like, I don't want to
Yeah,
tell
what do you
him.
do?
No, I'm not. He looked so wistful at the time that I didn't want to clear that up for him. But
Wow.
it was so cute. And then at the end of the interview, Bon, I'm sure, got bored, because who wouldn't? The questions weren't going anywhere, and so he said he had to leave. That he got the shits actually, and he had to leave. And Malcolm looked at him and he says, "Your first American interview and you got the shits?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so he gets up and the whole band begs him not to leave. Every single band member begged him. Come on, Bon. No, come on. So Bon goes out into the other room, sits on his head in a chair, and farts at people at will. Now that's a talent. I'm telling you, it is. So once he did that, then we went downstairs to leave, and I had 2 girlfriends with me. We were staying at a different hotel. And Malcolm said, you want to come over and hang out. And by then I was like, because actually Bon had Silver Smith with him. So he had a girlfriend with him. And so I was like, yeah, I'll go hang out with Malcolm and Angus. I'm not worried about that. So we go out of the club. And as my 2 girlfriends and I were walking out to go to our car, this cab pulls up. It's got the band in it. Bon and Angus throw Malcolm out, grab my girlfriend and throw her in the back seat of the cab and say, "Malcolm will show you where our hotel is." And they take off. So I'm like, okay. So we get in my car and my girlfriend's next to me. Malcolm gets behind me. And the whole way to his hotel, either he had his hands over my eyes or he kept trying to grab the wheel. So that was the ride to the hotel. And then when we got to the hotel, we were, and why didn't I remember Cliff's hotel room number? I'm still, that's, big regret there. But as we're walking down the hall, Bon opens the door, flings it wide open of his room, and Silver's standing there stark naked behind him. And he's got this, this little grin on his face, and he goes, "Just wanted to say goodnight to everybody, have a good night." And we were all like, "Thanks, Bon, good night." But that was Bon, that was Bon. So, but yeah, that interview is now it's historic because it's all 5 of them on their first American tour. I think it's one of the only interviews that actually exists of all 5 of them.
Wow. So, and I said, once again, you're part of this. That's why I was just like rock and roll royalty. It's just, it's this legendary stuff. I want to get like with the band too and get your take on it. What was the biggest catalyst between such huge turnover at drums? There's that period where it's like they never kept the same drummer. It was like all these different guys are coming in. Was it just they weren't connecting? Because I mean, Phil, I'm trying to remember why Phil left in the first place.
Well, after Bon died, they went right back into the studio. They went to the Bahamas and recorded Back in Black, and they went right back on tour. And I saw them in September of 1980. I met Angus's wife, and I met Brian for the first time. And I had not heard Back in Black. I refused to listen to it on the radio because I didn't want to hear anybody singing without Bon. I just couldn't do it. Yeah. I thought, I want to see it in person, and if it's good, it's good. And I didn't know, but they just were pretty much forced to keep going. So they toured forever for that album, and they were hurting. They were in a lot of pain. Back in Black is an historic album now, but for me, I can hear the pain in their playing. You can just hear it. They poured everything they had into that album, and then they go back in to do For Those About to Rock. And by this time, Phil, it's hard to say who took it harder when Bon died, but I know that Phil took it really hard. and he got into drugs. He got into. He did record. There's stories saying he did not record drums on For Those About to Rock, but he did. But there was something that happened between him and Malcolm. They got into a fight, and Malcolm fired him and sent him home.
Sitting packing. Yep.
But then this was, early 80s. And then by 85 or 86, Malcolm had to leave the tour to quit drinking. And it got to the point where I guess Angus, said to him, he said, I'm not going to go through what we went through with Bon. You've got to stop. So they all paid a price that people don't realize. Everybody looks at them and says, oh, they went on with Brian and, they did this and that. And then, it obviously didn't bother them very much. And I know that 40 years later, 44 years this summer, when I talk to the guys, whenever I see, especially when Angus and I talk, or Malcolm, God bless him, when we used to talk, they always talked about Bon. Always. So
yeah,
he was...
You brought it up, and I was, I was waiting for that type too. It's just their latest album that they just came out with. I said I was really impressed with that, and it's also, that had to be really hard as well because now, Malcolm's no longer there.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
and,
I mean,
I know Angus has said in interviews that, anytime that he plays his guitar or anything, he feels Malcolm's right there. And I do think that the engineer, Mike Frazier, he said in an interview that they came in one day and one of the songs sounded like it had Malcolm on backing vocals.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that also happened back when they recorded Razor's Edge, which was, a huge turning point for them too at that time. And I can't remember who told me this story, but the story was they came into the studio one day and it sounded like Bon was on background vocals on a song. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're close. They're always close.
Yeah.
Susan, Stevie is filling in for Malcolm now. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's their nephew.
Okay, and
Stevie's their nephew.
But you note in your frequently asked questions, that the band was basically heavily supported by and encouraged by family members, and it's been a family run business from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about the early days that you document in your book?
Well, Angus and Malcolm grew up in a very musical family. They all played instruments constantly, and their older brother Alex, when they emigrated to Australia, Alex stayed behind and actually was in a band called Grapefruit. It was one of the first bands signed by the Apple record label. But when they came to Australia, their older brother George started a band, and pretty soon, he had the right people. They became the Easy Beats, and they became huge. And Angus told me a long time ago, he said that when they came home one day from school and girls were trying to climb over the fence to get in windows to see George, they decided right then and there what they were going to do with their lives.
Just the rock and roll legacy was born right then. Yep.
But George did everything. I mean, even in the beginning, like when they didn't have a bass player or a drummer, George played bass and drums. And George, he and Harry Vanda produced their first 6 albums. So George was a huge part. There would be no AC/DC without George. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
we better get to Van Halen here. I just looked at the clock. Good Lord, we've been yeah. So the infamous Sheridan incidents. When we have that thing. So how did it come to be that you were at? You end up meeting Van Halen for the first time?
Well, the paper I started with, a few of us left, and they started a new paper called the Emerald City Chronicle, which came out every other week, and it was big at the time. You didn't have 24-hour news, no CNN, no MTV. So print was very big. So we got everything. We got interviews, pictures, albums in the mail. We had the red carpet, basically, whatever we wanted, because we gave publicity. So one day there was a red vinyl album came in the mail with 4 songs on it from a band out of California with 2 brothers, and they were called Van Halen. And my mentor and editor boss / buddy, Michael St. John, God bless him, he put the album on. And I like to say that, I'd heard a lot. I'd already, I was hanging out with AC/DC. And when I heard the Eruption was the first song. And when you heard Van Halen, it was like putting on rose-colored glasses. The world wasn't the same tint anymore. Yep. And we went crazy for Van Halen, absolutely crazy. So they go on tour, their first tour, they get signed to Warner Brothers. They're on tour with Montrose and Journey, and they get booked into Wisconsin, and they get booked at the Orpheum Theater. Well, the Orpheum didn't want to have 3 bands, so they bumped Van Halen off the bill and gave them the night off. And when my editor, Michael, found out about it, he's like, they can't have the night off. What do you mean they got the night off? He says, call the record label, see if you can get them booked into a club. So I called my contact, Mary, at Warner Brothers, and I told her the thing. I said, look, we got people pumped here. They've got to play. And she goes, oh, they love to play. What do you think? And I said, I gave them the phone numbers of 2 clubs. And about 3 hours later, they called me back and they said, we booked them into the Shuffle In. Is that good? And, you could have heard my yell all the way across the country, because I was like, yes, that's perfect. So they played on March 7th, 1978. They played the Shuffle In, which had about a capacity of maybe 700, and there was at least 1,000 people in there. Once you got where you stood, you couldn't move. You couldn't go to the bar. You couldn't go to the bathroom. If you moved, you lost your spot. That was it. But I got to hang out with them before they went on. So I go downstairs, and it's a big old family rec room type of atmosphere. Couches, shag carpet. It's the 70s, And so I'm hanging out with the band, and Michael was doing the official interview, but Eddie had a little practice amp, and Eddie offered to play us the first song he ever learned, which was Pipeline. So we played that, and they started getting ready. There was one bathroom, and they were all getting ready to go on that night. So they were taking turns using the bathroom. Well, David Lee Roth changed into his leather pants right in front of me, and he didn't ask me to turn around, and I didn't offer. So I may be a dumb blonde, but I'm not stupid, So and and I had a huge crush on Eddie. I'm just going to tell you, I had a huge crush on Eddie. David Lee Roth could have done anything in front of me naked, and it wouldn't have made any difference to me at all. And David picked up on that. And just loved me, absolutely loved me, because I'm like, yeah, you're cute, but whatever. And so we hit it off really well. And I saw them play, and they, oh my God, it was, I still get letters to this day, people saying that they were there, they saw it. And that night, they had been at the Sheridan Hotel on the 7th floor for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Tuesday night, they played the Shuffle. So Tuesday night, we went back to a party in one of their rooms, and we're hanging out and watching, and Alex decided that he just loved me beyond words. And basically because of him, I never got close enough to Eddie, but I tried. But Alex just, absolutely adored me. So we're hanging out, and all of a sudden he grabs my hand and he says, come on, let's go downstairs and see if the roadies are back yet. because we were waiting for them bringing back more beer from the bar once they packed up. So I get in the elevator with Alex. As soon as I get in the elevator and the doors close, he hits the emergency button on every floor, sending off alarms on every floor. So and then I started to realize maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. And then we got to about the 4th floor, and he stopped the elevator, and he jumped out, and he turned around and he said, "Okay, put your hand on this button and let it go when I tell you to. I want to show you a trick." And he puts his head between the doors, and I'm like, I'm not going to let. I'm not doing this. And he was, "You're doing it. We're not going anywhere. You better do it." And I'm thinking headlines the next day: rock journalist kills Van Halen drummer in freak elevator accident. I mean, so he was getting kind of angry, and then I'm like, fine, I will smash your head in an elevator door. So I let the button go, and it closed and hit him on the head and bounced open. And he thought that was the funniest damn thing he'd ever done. So, he's laughing. He's like, see? And I'm like, yeah, really funny. And then he liked to pick me up a lot. And he picked me up and like threw me out in the hallway like football. And then he put his hand on the button and he says, "Now you're going to do it." And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And he goes, "Well, I'm not going anywhere till we do it." And I'm looking up and down the hall thinking, can I outrun him? No, he'll tackle me. There's no way. So after a good 10 minutes of arguing, and where you get to that point where it's like, fine, smash my head in the elevator door. So I let him do it. They smashed on my head. Do not try this. This is not a good trick. The sound alone sounds like your head's being smashed, like really, and the doors pop back open. Alex, he's hysterical. He slides to the floor. Tears are streaming out of his eyes. And I'm like, what is so damn funny? And he goes, "You're the only one that's ever done this. You're the only one. Nobody in the band, nobody on the crew. Nobody's ever done this. You're the only person that's ever done this." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you, Alex. Thanks a lot." After that, the band was a little afraid of me. They really were. They're like, "Yeah, she's a nutcase, just like he is." And but 2003, I got flown to LA to be in the Van Halen Early Years DVD because of that. So, but don't do this. Don't try that trick. Do not. It can be fatal. It's not a funny trick.
Yeah, no, but I was just gonna say, this is why you're, like you said, you have this such rapport with these bands, is because you're doing the stuff that nobody else would do.
Oh, anything. I mean, yeah. I was a tomboy growing up, and I love hanging out with the guys. The roadies are more fun than the band usually. Mm-hmm. Hate to say it, but true. And except if you're Bon Scott. But I can hang with the guys, and that's one thing I think that AC/DC liked about me, is that they could say anything or try to freak me out, and it just never worked. I was always like, yeah, what, is that the best you got, kind of thing.
Well, and you're probably, like you said, here we are 2 for 2 with lead singers that are attracted to you, and they're like, "Hey, you want to come back here? I'm going to change in front of you." And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what is going on? Same thing. David Lee Roth's over there. It's like, did I forget about, it's just like, why is she telling me no? Yeah. Well, it's like,
and I have to throw this in. I am the only woman that ran away from Gene Simmons and lived to tell about it.
Wow.
That is the truth.
We need to hear that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want, do you mind telling that story?
Sure. I'll try to make it quick, but I went to see Kiss December, the night before I went to do the interview with AC/DC. I had to go cover Kiss because we didn't have anybody else to do it. I didn't want to do it. And I got into a fight with my editor, and he promised me that he would introduce me to Ted Nugent later that month if I covered Kiss that night. So I went. I didn't like Kiss. Never been a fan. Sorry. I was into AC/DC and those kind of bands, and Van Halen. And well, not Van Halen yet. I hadn't met him yet. But I ended up at a party at the Edgewater Hotel in Madison after the show. It was in the governor's suite. everybody was there. It was a very high profile party. And I had heard, everybody knew about Gene Simmons and his book of pictures. Whoever he slept with, he took a picture of her, whatever. And they teased me, oh, you're going to end up in that book. And I'm like, yeah, right. Over my dead body, am I going to end up in that book? So when I got to the party, I heard that Gene had hit on a woman who was there with her husband. And they got into an argument and they got thrown out of the party. And that party for me, I lived on the deli trays at these parties because I was so broke all the time. So so the food, that's all I cared about was, it's free food. So I'll be over where the food is. So my mission that night was to stay away from Gene Simmons, no matter what it took. And nobody knew what they looked like without makeup on. But Gene, he walked into the party. He had a brown pan velvet bodysuit on, tons of gold chains.
Of course he did.
Huge platforms, big afro, and in his belt buckle was a dead tarantula. Very, very becoming. And he was like 6'9", and I'm like 5'5". So every time he looked over at me, I'd look away. And every time he came over toward my side of the room, I'd go to the other side of the room. So this went on pretty much during the whole party. And there was another party going on downstairs in another room where, better drugs were being taken. Let's put it that way. And I got bored. So I wanted to go check out the other party. So my girlfriend and I always have, somebody riding shotgun with me. We leave the party. We go down the hall. We hit the elevator to go downstairs. I'm standing there and the elevator door opens and I look right into a tarantula. And I look up and I look up and I look up and I go, oh, shit, no. And I turned around and I started walking. And Gene comes out of the elevator. He's following me down the hall and he's towering over me and he's trying to stop me. Like, hi, my name's Gene. I'd really like to know your name, blah, 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 And I'm like, oh, no, this is not happening. So I won't look at him. So I get all the way to the end of the hall and I'm staring at the floor. He's trying to talk to me and I look at his boots and I go, oh my God, those are really cool boots. Can I see your boots? And he goes, well, of course. And he leaned over to pull up his pant leg and I ran out the exit door. I ran. My girlfriend was running after me. She's like, what are you doing? I said, run. So, I ran down like 3 flights of stairs, came out the exit door and ran right into Ace Frehley and Peter Criss. And Ace is like, where the hell have you been? I've been looking all over for you. So I ended up partying with those guys and saved myself from Gene. And 2 weeks later, AC/DC's opening for Kiss. My friend Barry calls me backstage from a payphone. I can hear Kisses playing. And he's yelling into the phone, what did you do to Gene Simmons? And I'm like, uh-oh. What does he know about that night? I said, what do you mean? And he's like, what did you do to Gene Simmons? He's telling everybody about you. He called you a crazy blonde journalist from Madison, Wisconsin. And if you go there, you got to check her out. And when when AC/DC laughed and says, Sue, we know her already. And Gene lost it. He totally lost it. But he was not happy. He was not happy because women don't run away, except for me. So.
Yeah. You look at this picture. It's like, good Lord.
Yeah. Scary as hell. Totally. I mean, seriously scary as hell.
Oh my God.
That's it. That is a fascinating. Wait, 8 months or so from August 15th. When
August
you meet
16th, yeah, and then this was in December. It was only a couple months later.
Okay, and so you meet AC/DC. Yep. Kiss and Van Halen within
like 6-7 months. Yeah.
It was a short time span, but that's pretty interesting. Okay, so at what point does Ted Nugent come into the story? You just mentioned him.
Yeah, I met him. He played the Coliseum in Madison, I believe, on December 18th. So it was right in the middle of the month that I'd already seen Kiss and then AC/DC. And then I met Ted. And I adored Ted at the time. I was scared of him. I was a little intimidated of him, of course. But he was super nice, really friendly, really smart, could talk about anything. And we hit it off. I mean, he tried several times, and I was terrified of him. I'm thinking, I'm going to see him, swinging from the light fixture and a loincloth. I mean, me and Uncle Ted, not happening. But but when I went to take a picture with him that night, I scooted in front of him on the couch. He grabbed me by the waist and sat me down on his lap, and he put his arms around me, and he said, "This one's for Mom."
Yeah, you're like everybody. Every rock star is like the one that got away, the one that would always told us no, the one that was always just like everybody would just, they always said their photo. Just everybody's like, remember Susan? Yeah, she was the one that no matter what, you're like, no.
No, no. And people ask me that all the time. A lot of people assume that I went on tour with AC/DC, and I was invited to go with them on the bus. But I always say, you don't go on the bus unless you want to play. And to be truthful, I would not have been able to be on a bus with AC/DC that close to Cliff Williams and not have all things wrong happen. Okay. I've had a crush on that man for my entire life, basically. And he knows it. Now he knows
Cliff,
it.
Cliff, yeah, Cliff is the one that,
Yes.
it's like April kind of said, it's like, you almost need to have like the reverse thing. You need to have a book with a photograph of all the ones that have hit on you and you've told them no.
Oh yeah. Keith Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He picked me out of a lineup of groupies and asked me to his well, he had a roadie come up to me and say, "Would you like a glass of wine before the show?" Yeah, free wine, might lead to food. So I went into this dressing room and it had a keyboard and flowers and a little tea set and wine. The roadie gave me a glass of wine and said, enjoy your evening. And he walked out, and Keith Emerson walked in out of the shower in a towel. Now, I grew up on Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I almost fainted. I looked at him. I grabbed my bag. I pulled out the paper. I pulled out my tape recorder. I was like, "Hi, Mr. Emerson. I'm here to get an interview with you." And, and I'm just like rattling. And he goes, "Oh, hold on." And he goes back and comes back out in jeans and a towel around his shoulders. Yeah. And we spoke, and he said, definitely interview tomorrow. We'll do an interview tomorrow at the Edgewater Hotel. I hope you enjoy the show. And then I go back out, I watch the show, and there's a big intermission in the middle. And while I am there, during the intermission, the same roadie finds me. And he says, "Mr. Emerson would like your company." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And so I went back to his dressing room and had another glass of wine, and he played me the first song he ever learned on the piano. So
wow,
we remained friends for a lot of years. So
that's cool, being serenaded by Keith Emerson.
Oh yeah.
What? It's like this recurring theme. It's like all these guys are just like, they're absolutely just absolutely struck with the fact that I even come out in a towel and she's like, no. Everybody's like, no. And they're like, well, maybe if I perform her a one-on-one concert, maybe then she'll say yes. No.
No. And at the end of the night, I want to do a movie about my first book that has all these stories in it.
Yes.
And at the end of the night, I see him going out to dinner with one of the groupies, and I go home and have a cheese and, ham and cheese sandwich because that's all I could afford. Now, I could have had a really good dinner that night, but I didn't. So,
man, it's awesome. Like Harold, it's just like, why do blondes have all the fun?
Oh my God, I was born a blonde. I'm not a blonde anymore. So, don't be fooled. But I love music. I love rock and roll. And at the time that this was happening, like Mark mentioned, on all these bands and, Journey. I hung out with Journey. I hung out with all those guys.
Cheap Trick.
Cheap Trick. I ended up working for Cheap Trick. We knew that we were witnessing history. And it was a joke among everyone at the paper, like, who's going to write the first book? And my editor friend, Michael St. John, actually was writing one when he passed away. So I ended up writing one that came out in 2001. It's 20 years old now. And that's Rock and Roll Fantasy. And that's my, all the crazy stories are in there.
I was looking here. And one of the things I wanted to get on too with you is you really have a passion for paranormal and the spirit.
I do.
Yeah. And so you have a book about that. And I'm trying to apologize. I'm just scrambling right here to get the name of the book. I know Mark's got a handy.
I think Mark's got the book.
Yeah, Mark's got the book handy right there.
Secrets of the Universe.
Yep.
And here's
making sure. I wanted to
updated edition. It's on Amazon.
There it is. Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
There you go. It's like Vanna White.
It's
like
Mark, turn the letter. Turn the letter.
Yes, I've always been interested in the paranormal, and I got involved with the paranormal about 13 years ago, and I ended up doing some speaking engagements for the unexplained research team in Wisconsin. I investigated Bobby Mackey's in Kentucky. I've gone to Gettysburg. I investigated a brothel in Deadwood, South Dakota. I've had everything happen to me. I've seen full body apparitions. Wow. I've seen UFOs. I have seen stuff that I don't know what that was, but I tend to attract things like that. So I love everything about the paranormal.
Wow, what is your go-to, when somebody asks, it's what's your favorite, most memorable experience? What would you say? Just throw that out there. What is your most memorable paranormal experience that you've encountered yourself personally?
Probably, and this, we could do a whole show on this, but my son, between 4 and 6 years old, had past life memories of being on the Titanic.
Wow.
It ended up being a big deal. We're talking thousands of pictures drawn, lots of memories, he knew things about the ship that he shouldn't have known between 4 and 6 years old. Nobody showed him or taught him anything. And after we went through this for 2 years, they brought the Titanic exhibit to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago in 2000. Yeah, it was in 2000. So my daughter, who is a forensic psychologist, suggested that we take him to this exhibit to see if it would bring him some closure. So we did. We went to the exhibit. He was 6 at the time. All the other kids are running around having fun, being kids. My son is studying everything. Like it took us hours to get through the exhibit because he had to look at every single item. And we come up on this boiler. Now, when my son started remembering things, if you will, he used to sob over the men in the boiler room that died first because the doors came down and locked them in. And he kept saying, "Mama, Mama, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened." And he would wail. He would sob. It was horrible. So we get down there and they have a boiler. And I'm like, oh, great, here we go. And it's got curtains, it's got mirrors on both sides. So, you look down one and you see a bunch of boilers, that kind of effect. Mm-hmm. So I look to the right, I see that. I look to the left and I see it, a life-size oil painting of a man shoveling coal into the boiler. And I think to myself, wow, they went way out for this exhibit. I mean, you could see the heavy clothing he was wearing and, how hard it must have been to be, how hot it was and everything. And so I remember, feeling kind of sad seeing it, but I thought, that's really a nice tribute. And as the crowd got pushed more to the left and I got closer to that painting, I looked up at that painting and the man in the painting looked down at me like, "Who are you?" And as soon as he moved, I closed my eyes for a second and I opened my eyes and I was looking in the mirror at myself. And there's no man and there's no painting. And my daughter leaned over. I said, "Did you just see?" And she goes, "A man?" And I said, "In suspenders?" And she goes, "With a hat on?" And I saw him as a painting. She saw him as a man standing where there was nowhere to stand. But we both saw him. He saw us, and then he vanished. But when he looked at me like I scared him, which scared the hell out of me. But yeah.
So how do you explain multiple eyewitness hallucination? It's like several people seeing UFO. It's not just your word against everyone else. There are other. Your daughter saw the same thing. What? How do you explain that?
Well, I know what I saw, and I'm a pretty perceptive person, and I think it's interesting that I made it into a painting to me, because that's not what my daughter saw. What she saw was a man standing where there was nowhere to stand, so she couldn't understand why he was there. I saw him as a painting, but when I looked at the painting and he turned really fast and looked right at me, and when a painting turns and looks at you and then vanishes, and there now if you look at the reports of how many sightings are experienced at the Titanic exhibits, it's very, very common to see apparitions, all kinds of things.
Was it possible that was your son's past life?
I thought it might have been, yeah. It kind of hit me like, like that man was shoveling coal, and did he see maybe angels, what he thought were angels right before he died? I mean, that I've thought that, like, was that my son? Why did he see me, and why did I see him? So because he was so, he's so distraught over the boiler. Oh yeah, he was.
And then that's where you have your experiences through a boiler. I wonder if that was basically somehow that connection, that's fantastic.
Oh yeah. Well, and we were in 2013, and you can still find it out there. We were featured on the show Ghost Inside My Child, and which was years after the event. He was 19 at the time. And that was pretty cool. It was, it brought up so many things because, my son, at between 4 and 6 years old, there's no way that he knew stuff about this ship. Like one time, he drew the Titanic on everything, placemats, notebooks, a tablecloth. Anywhere he was, he'd draw the Titanic. And one day he came home with a picture of the ship with the 4 smokestacks, but the last one with no smoke coming out. So I said to him, "Well, did you not finish this picture, sweetie? How come there's no smoke coming out of this smokestack?" And he looked at me, like, "Mom." And he goes, "Mama, that's a dummy stack. It was fake. They only used it for show." And I'm like, "What?" I didn't know until years later when they did documentaries on the Titanic that the 4th smokestack was fake. It was not used. No smoke came out of it. They did it because it made the ship look bigger. How would he know that?
Interesting.
Unless you were somebody that worked possibly like the boiler room or something like that and knew, there's nothing connected to that stack.
Exactly.
Wow, that's
and that's in my Secrets of the Universe book. The whole story's in there because a lot of it didn't make it into the TV show. So.
Well, if you're up to it, would you mind coming back on to talk on that?
Sure.
Because I think that'd just be a blast to have you back on just to talk paranormal and talk just the stories too. Because there's.
Well, we didn't get to talk about the Van Halen picture. So when you have time.
Oh yeah, I can bring it back up.
Do you have time for me to tell you real quick why that happened?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, let's. I'll try to bring it back up here real quick. So.
The guy that took the picture, his name is Tom Giles. He still works in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. God bless him. And he always put me in the picture with the band, before or after the interview or whatever. And I was literally intimidated by these guys. And I figured, well, if I get that close, somebody's going to grab me. So I wouldn't pose. I didn't want to take the picture. So then they started to fake cry and make a big deal out of it. We're not good enough. That's okay, And so I walked up to them and I literally said to them, not one finger. Don't touch me or the picture's over. So David like lightly is touching my elbow.
Elbow right there. Yeah.
Alex, of course, is breaking the rules, and I could feel his hair on my neck. But Eddie bends down, and I have these huge, wide leg 70s dress pants on. I don't feel that. If I would have felt that, not only would I hit the ceiling, but then somebody would have been punched. So they're giggling. The photographer's giggling. I have no idea what's so funny. And then a couple days later, he gives, me a copy of the picture, and he says, "You want to know why everybody was laughing so hard?" And I have they were on the cover of our paper. So I have an autograph of Eddie's that says, "To Sue, I love your thighs, Eddie Van Halen."
Oh my God, that's awesome. Yeah, that's the thing. It's just when I know when I said that like royalty type thing. It's like but you look at this. I mean, you're in the promo. I put that picture. You're in this photo with the original AC/DC. Original Van Halen. I mean, you are in some of rock and roll's iconic moments. I said that interview. That's pretty much and it's fantastic. And I mean, I said I'm honored that we got a chance to talk to you about this because that is just fascinating.
Well, no, I'm honored to have been part of it. I had no idea that 44 years later I'd still be talking about this. And it's just I was in the right place at the right time, and I wanted to be part of the guys. And I didn't have a camera, and I didn't ask for autographs. I wanted to hang and get stories, because I was doing stories. I wanted quotes. I wanted stuff. So I had an ulterior motive to be a serious rock journalist, which now I say I chose to be poor. So it's great.
Yeah, but no, you did. You definitely bucked the trend that they're used to. Because normally the people that want to be around them, are trying to do anything they can to get close and be the one that's picked. You were the one that was, the only one that you were willing to pick was Cliff, and you forgot his room number. His room number.
I tried being a good kid. Something told me though when I met those guys, I knew how I didn't know how big they were going to be, but I knew they were going to be huge. And I knew if I slept with anybody, that was it. I mean, now I know they're kids, and if you sleep with somebody, they're not going to let you backstage. They're not going to introduce you to their kids. I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be the person that, 20 years, never thought it would be 40, but I wanted to be that person years down the road that was like, she's a friend. None of the wives have a problem with me. There's no reason to, because I behaved.
Well, yeah. I mean, if David Roth is dropping his pants right in front of you, nothing's occurring. You're pretty. Nope. I think it's okay to have Susan around the family. I think we're okay.
It's cool. That's cool.
What's next for AC/DC? They have the new CD. Don't know about the touring, and that's a little up in the air. But what have you heard about the next project they're going to do to promote the CD? Just interview, call them, have them.
No, they're waiting
on the Beardos.
Yeah, they're waiting because the set, the stage, and everything was built 2 years ago. So they're just waiting for the okay to tour. They have enough material for another album. I know that. And a lot of the material that's on Power Up are things that, Malcolm came up with. He's the riff master. He's come up with every great riff they've ever written. And I know they're kind of on hold, they're waiting like everybody else where they can actually tour, the whole world. But yeah, I mean, the pandemic blew everything apart.
Well,
So,
they have made at least one video to accompany Power Up.
oh yeah, no, they just released one a while ago that it looks like they're all in the same room, but they're not. It's
Is
got
that
the
Realize?
white background. Yeah, Realize.
Realize.
And
Yep.
Okay.
and that was done all in different countries, all the same, and then put together to make it look like they're
Oh, that's
together.
impressive because
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought they were in the same room.
No, sorry.
No, that's
blew that.
no, but that's amazing the way that they did that because you watch it, you'd be hard pressed to tell you. It's like, yeah, they're not in the same room.
I know it cost a lot of money.
Oh, I'm sure. But it's one of those for anybody that hasn't heard Power Up. This one, I really compare this one to Razor's Edge back there. It just the way it sounds. I mean, this definitely to me felt like a tribute to Malcolm.
It is, yeah.
In the way
it's beautiful.
Yeah, everything is. They're not trying to. It's not over the top stuff. I mean, just everything is just. Demon Fire is an amazing song. Realize. I Shot in the Dark. I mean, these are all fantastic songs, and they're nice staying power. I mean, I think this is one of their best albums that they put out in a while.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I love Black Ice. I mean, that was amazing. But yeah, Power Up is really for Malcolm, and so much of Malcolm is in the songs. He created all the riffs. The Back in Black riff, Thunderstruck riff, all that stuff came from Malcolm, and you can hear him all over that album.
That's cool. But we're definitely going to bring you back on. I mean, that's if you will, which we did our job. She said yes. She said, "See, hey, take that, all you rock and roll guys." She said yes. It's the beard.
Hey, it's been a long time since I had 3 guys to myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm,
Yeah. See,
I'm a
all those
happy
other guys
camper right now.
And all those other guys were clean shaved and all that stuff. We had the beards, and she said yes.
Yes.
So that was the key all along, guys.
Didn't help Ted Nugent.
No. It takes a special kind of person to be like yes to the Ted. Yeah. He's quite the character.
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, you can go to SusanMasino.com and you can check her out. She's got her books listed right there. Secrets of the Universe, The Story of AC/DC, Let There Be Rock, AC/DC Facts. So all that's left to know about the world's true rock and roll band. You can see pictures there. You even have, I think you had a book on Hank Williams too, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
A book called Family Tradition, 3 Generations of Hank Williams.
Yes.
I'm very proud of that one.
And you're well accomplished on radio too. You've been on Coast to Coast AM many times too. It's so, honored, like I said, truly honored to have, been lucky enough to have you on the show. And that's,
anytime. Like Bond said, call me anytime.
Awesome. Well,
thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, you're welcome. Great. Well, have a great night. Like I said, everybody go to SusanMasino.com. Check that out. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think I'm missing another location, but you can go there, get her books, get those. Now, if they go to your site, can they get a signed copy?
If they, send me an email through my website, and I will answer back. And I do sell signed copies.
Perfect. So everybody do that. So thanks again, Susan. Appreciate it. Have a great night, and we'll be in touch. We'll get you down the road and get you so we can talk paranormal.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Bump in the night.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. This is brought to you by Nanny Cakes. Go to Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook, or give her a call at 407-923-2898. And if you mentioned that you saw this on 3 Beers Podcast, man, she's going to take pity on you and give you a discount on your cakes. So not only can you drown your sorrows in that cake, because what you just had to watch, So Mark, we got to get a beard on you. We have to. Even if it's just a fake one that you can hold up with a stick, we got to get you, especially on these promo times. So
I used to have one like for a Jerry Garcia costume I had at one time. I don't know where it is now, but I'll have to shop around for a new one.
Even if it's just a glue one, quick, just slap it on. Yeah. So, all right, there we go. threebeardspodcast.com. Check us out on all social medias. Patreon.com/3beardspodcast. We like you to become a beardo just like us. We are rebroadcast on Patriot Radio, courtesy of J&J Beard Company. Go to jjbeardco.com, download the Zeno app, and listen to us there and favorite us. We have, like I said, we have a rebroadcast on podcast platforms too, so you can take us wherever you want. Let us take the wheel, not literally. Not literally. Austin's a terrible driver.
What did I do?
No, it's probably me. It's probably me. I'm getting old. I can't see. Everybody, thanks again for watching. Appreciate it. We will be back next week. We've got a couple of great shows. We had Jim Willis come on talking about censoring God, and the man, the myth, the legend, the fireball himself, Trap Gambino, will be on for the second show, and that is gonna be. You love him, you hate him. He's entertaining either way. So we look forward to talking with him again. So everybody, thanks for watching. Mark Eddy, thank you so much, sir. Fantastic job, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.